And I just said to Kelly that she's a visionary, and she said, I'm a visionary? Yes, Kelly is a visionary. I think this is amazing. About 9 months or so ago, she was saying that we met, and she came up and told me all about the She is Fierce idea, which I thought was awesome. But I thought to myself, do I consider myself fierce? Fierce, that's an interesting word. And then I kind of thought, well, I am fiercely passionate about service. I am fiercely passionate about what I do, so I guess I am fierce. So I went home and talked to my husband and my son. He's 21. They know everything. And I said, you know, I'm going to be doing this series. I'm going to be speaking, She is Fierce. I said, I don't really know that I'm fierce. And they started laughing. And they said, oh, you've got to be kidding. Yes, Mom, you're fierce. I'm like, what do you know? What do you know? So anyway, I decided the first thing I want to do is talk about service. Because service means many different things. And I actually looked it up in Merriam-Webster. There's 11 definitions. 11 definitions of service. It can be a noun, a verb, or an adjective. But what we're going to be talking about tonight is, actually I'm going to give you the exact definition, contributing to the welfare of others. Or basically just helping others. That's really what service is all about, just helping others. So service, I think throughout our lives, service is really important. But throughout our lives, I think, and my friend was just talking about the different seasons of our life. So I think, you know, different times of your life, maybe there's points of your life where you're not doing a lot of service at all. Sometimes you're doing a lot of service. Sometimes it becomes your life's work. But I do think it ebbs and flows. And it reminds me, service brings back a funny story. And you, as I'm going through this, you're going to say, how does this relate to service? But in 1981, I believe it was, 91, how many people in this room ever saw the movie City Slickers? Billy Crystal, City Slickers. Love that movie. So it's a funny movie about, there's 3 men from New York, and they're approaching middle age. It's Billy Crystal, a couple of his friends. They're having a midlife crisis. And they decide, for some reason, instead of getting therapy, that they're going to go to the Southwest, and they're going to go to a dude ranch. And they are going to go on a supervised cattle drive. And that's how they're going to kind of address their midlife crisis. So they go to the dude ranch. And they meet a man named Curly. And Curly is played by Jack Palance, if you remember. Some of you are way too young, so just bear with me. I don't even know what I'm talking about, but it'll make sense in the end. So Jack Palance, he's like a hardened, grizzled ranch hand. He's the ranch boss, and it's his job to get these greenhorns on the cattle drive. So basically, he gives them a hard time. They go into the cattle drive, and in about the middle of the cattle drive, Curly himself becomes very, very ill. And they don't know it, but he's actually dying. So he's dying. And this is really a poignant scene. I want to read it to you. Curly, Jack Palance, Mitch is Billy Crystal. Curly says, do you know what the secret of life is? And he says this. And Mitch says, your finger? Curly says, no, one thing, just one thing. You stick with that and the rest don't mean shit. Sorry, it's a little salty. The rest don't mean shit. And Mitch says, but what is the one thing? What is the one thing? Curly says, that's what you have to find out. What is the one thing? All right? So over the years, I kind of thought about that. What is the one thing? What is my one thing? What is my secret? What is my purpose in life? So in order to kind of take you to how I came to my conclusion, I'm going to give you the conclusion first, and I'm going to tell you how I got there. My conclusion was, the purpose of my life, really, is to help other people. That's why I'm here. I'm here to help other people. The mic just went off. Can you hear me? Yes, to help other people. Because when you think about it, what are you here for? To make money? Are you here to get things? Are you here? I mean, why are we actually here? When you think about it, the most important thing in life is other people. me is the purpose of life. And people in the audience are saying, oh my gosh, she is so Pollyanna, she must be a social worker. Guilty. I am now a social worker. I have not always been a social worker. So I want to kind of tell you how I came to this conclusion that helping other people service is really the purpose of our life. So I was born in Washington, D.C. area, grew up there, Northern Virginia, had a very happy childhood, nothing traumatic, no late reason why I wanted to be a social worker. Very happy life, no problems. Went to high school, went to college at George Mason University, and basically when I think back on that, when I think about, did I volunteer, was I doing any service early in my life? Well, and don't laugh people, the older people in the crowd. So when I was in high school, which was the late 70s, the only thing I really did to volunteer, I worked on the Jimmy Carter campaign. The Jimmy Carter campaign, yes. So that's what I did in high school, because I was really busy doing other things, didn't have time to really, or wasn't even thinking about service or volunteering. And then in college, again, late 70s, early 80s, I joined the National Organization of Women. Back then it was really cool to do back then. Really, really cool, because it was just kind of getting off the ground. National Organization for Women. Did a lot of marching around the Equal Rights Amendment. Did that. That was kind of in college while I was working. But again, not really service. But that's kind of that was my volunteering, okay? High school and college. So I got out of college, and at that point in time I decided, okay, my purpose right now is to make as much money as I possibly can and to be really successful in my career and to climb the corporate ladder. And I think that's pretty normal for young people coming out of college. So that was my goal, and that's basically what I set out to do. So I got a job in downtown DC, worked in downtown DC for several years, married my high school sweetheart, and I do want to talk about an aside. Has anyone here ever lived or worked in Washington, D.C.? Okay. Has anyone here ever visited Washington, D.C.? Okay. Washington, D.C. has a huge homeless problem. I mean, it is huge. And every day, I walk the streets of D.C. to my job, was on Metro, saw homeless people all day, every day. And at that time, I never thought to myself, I need to do something about this, or this is my responsibility, or maybe I can do something. It didn't occur to me. I felt bad. I wasn't unsympathetic. I felt bad, but I thought this is somebody else's responsibility. I was young, I was in my mid-20s, that's what I thought. Now, in the life has a lot of ironic twists department, or the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. I have a 26-year-old son right now who lives and works in Washington, D.C. And he lives like a block from the White House. He was home this weekend that happened, because he had an engagement party, he's engaged. And he says to me, this is unbelievable, but we're in the kitchen, we're just talking, and I had already written these notes. So I'd already written this part about me not doing anything about homelessness when I was in my mid-20s. And he says, you know, there are becoming more and more homeless people in D.C. And I've got to tell you, I have a lot of people visiting me from Jacksonville and friends coming in from out of town, and it's really embarrassing to have all these homeless people. Why isn't someone doing something about this? Whose job is it? What? Do you know who I am? I am your mother, who is a homeless advocate. I said, why don't you do something about it? Anyway, a long life lesson ensued, but isn't that ironic? I mean, that was so weird. All right, getting back to my story, but I digress. So after working in downtown DC for 5 years, the organization, and it was sales and marketing, so the organization said, hey, we want to send you to beautiful Miami, Florida, because we want to open a regional sales office in Miami. I said to my husband, who doesn't want to live in Miami. I mean, that's exciting, and I've lived my whole life in Northern Virginia. So we skedaddled down to Miami, which was exciting. So we lived in Miami. I started the regional sales office. And after a few years, my husband's company transferred him to an office a little further north in Fort Lauderdale. And this becomes very important to the story, so remember that. He moves to Fort Lauderdale, and we moved to Boca Raton because we were living in South Florida, in Kendall, pretty far south in Miami. So we moved to Boca. I become pregnant, and we're very happy. I'm doing well in my career. He's doing well in his career. I'm pregnant, and we say to each other, you know what? Wait, we should probably join a church because we hadn't been to church in a long time. He went to church his whole life. He's a very loyal churchgoer. I was a CNE. If you all know what CNEs are, Christmas and Easter. But we decided, you're going to have a child. We probably need to make sure we expose them to church. So we joined Good Shepherd Lutheran Church in Boca. And they had something called social ministry, which was really social justice. And I thought, well, you know, I have an interest in that, so I think I'm going to join that committee. Joined the committee, started doing a lot of work with a group called Uplift Assistance. And that's an awesome organization, kind of like Catholic Charities, if you know what they do. So their tagline is hand up, not a handout. So I love what they did a lot of work around that. I was very, very happy. I was doing well in my career. I had the child. I was doing volunteering. I thought, okay, I'm doing okay. I'm doing okay. Then it happened, the turning point. August 24th, 1992. Does anyone know what happened on August 24th, 1992? Hurricane Andrew. Hurricane Andrew happened. Now this is why it was fortuitous that we had moved to Boca, because Boca was 30 miles out of the epicenter. If I had been in Kendall, we would have been decimated. So that happened, and our church, as thousands of other churches across the state and across the country, at that point, we galvanized. It was devastating. We said, we've got to get down there as soon as humanly possible. We packed up the church van with water and supplies and people. We got on the Florida Turnpike, and we headed down there, I mean, within a couple of days, as soon as we could get on the road. So we started going down. And I know, people, was anyone in South Florida during Hurricane Andrew? Okay. So I know people saw this on TV, but if you were not there, it is hard to even describe what this was like. So we were going down Florida Turnpike, the church van, everybody's chattering, we're excited because we're going to go help people. And we were very excited to help people. I mean, it was a devastating thing, but we thought, we're going to do some good. We're going to get down there, we're going to help people. But as we're going down the turnpike, the closer we get to Homestead, we start seeing buildings, high-rises, literally sheared in half. Because there are a lot of tornadoes associated with Hurricane Andrew. And it was like a child's diorama. Anybody know what a diorama is? It's like, okay, the building was cut in half, and you could still see the furniture was still in its place. The pictures were still on the wall. It was the most bizarre, wasn't it? It was bizarre how that happened. So we keep getting further south, and then there are no buildings, and there are no trees, and there are no birds. There's nothing. Rubble. So we get to Homestead. We find this little church that's going to be our home base, and it was damaged. It was very damaged, but it was still standing. So we get there, and we start unloading. Everybody jumps on the back of flatbeds. And we start going into the neighborhoods. Well, the neighborhoods, quite honestly, there's no neighbor. I mean, it's just piles of rubble. So we're literally going down roads with our water and our supplies. And I say to the people with me, there is no way there's anybody. There could not possibly be anybody in here. Look at this place. There's no one here. I know there isn't. As soon as they heard the truck, men, women, and children coming out of the rubble, I will never forget that as long as I live. Never. And, sorry. that was really heartbreaking, and it was heart-changing to see that happening in Miami, Florida, to see that happening. So we actually served down there for many months, and we ended up doing a lot of work with the migrant farm workers, because quite honestly, they had nothing prior to the hurricane, and they really had nothing after the hurricane. Worked with them. And through this whole process, I had an epiphany that how can it be that in one day, 175,000 people became homeless in one day in Miami. But in this country, every single day, people are becoming homeless. Right now, today, there's 3.5 million homeless people. So I realized at that moment, my one thing. That's my one thing. I can use my sales, my marketing, my management. I can use my skills around this issue to make a difference. And I decided that that's what I was going to do. So, at this point, over the next year, I thought I have to figure out, I have this career, and I was doing really well, making really good money. I have to figure out how am I going to get into social work? How am I going to become an advocate for the homeless? How's that going to happen? So I decided I needed to go back to school, get my master's degree in social work. That was the first step, I needed to do that. So I applied to FSU, found that program. They have cohorts all over the state. And that's what I was going to do. That's what I was doing. I got accepted. And then I became pregnant a second time. And my husband then gets transferred to Jacksonville, Florida. All this happening at one time. And so I decided, well, I have to move, and I want to make this change. So I'm just going to make the break right now. So I called my boss, who was located in North Carolina, because we're a national organization. So he was in North Carolina, and I said, Ted, you need to come down because I need to tell you something. Now remember, I was the regional sales manager. Okay, so I need to tell you something. So he came down, and we had lunch, and I said, look, I'm not quite sure how to tell you this, but I've decided that I have a calling to work with homeless people. What? I have a calling. I really feel that I have a calling from God to work with homeless people. So I'm going to resign. And plus we're moving into Jacksonville. So, and he said, and I have to tell you, this is funny. So I worked with almost entirely men my first career. There was over 100 salespeople nationwide, and there was 3 women. So 3 out of 100. So it was almost entirely men, and they never quite knew how to take me anyway. So Ted says, I'm not going to accept your resignation. I did not know that was your choice. No, I'm really not going to accept your resignation. I think he thought the hormones are kicking in and she's having a mental break. He said, why don't we do this? You're going to move to Jacksonville. Why don't you keep your biggest account? Because you'll still make half of what you're making now. You can go ahead and go to school. That's a great idea. But then you can make money and, it's going to help you. And I think what he's thinking is, she will come to her senses when she gets up there and realize that she doesn't really want to work with homeless people. But he could not have been more wrong, because I really didn't want to work with that was my calling. So we moved to Jacksonville, Florida, and I'm going to school, I have a second child, I'm still working at my job, joined a church. Church seems to be central in this whole story. So we joined the church, and they say, hey, how would you like to go serve meals at this really great homeless organization called the I Am Soulsbacker Center for the Homeless? I said, of course I would love to, because I am going to work with homeless people, and that's what I'm going to do. So wouldn't it be great if I could go there and, get started? So we went there, and I loved the Soulsbacker Center, and I know you don't think I'm objective, but at the time I was objective, because it's an amazing place. We'll talk a little bit more about that. But get to the Soulsbacker Center and love that, and then decide during my internship I'm going to intern at the Soulsbacker Center. So So over the next 13 years, I will have worked there 4 different times, and been on the board of directors. So it's obviously a place where I am meant to be. So, the Soul Factor Center, let me just put a little plug in, because Kelly told me I should. But the Soul Factor Center is the largest homeless provider in Northeast Florida. We house 360 men, women, and children on any given night, so we are the largest shelter. We have programs around housing, income, and healthcare, because our goal is obviously, what's the answer to homelessness? Is to house people. So in the end, that's our goal: get people jobs, get people healthcare, get people housing. So 67,000 patient visits a year for a federally qualified healthcare center. 512,000 meals we serve each and every year, so 1,500 meals a day. 237 people in jobs. So we are doing a lot around homelessness, which is my thing, which makes me very happy. So basically, my one thing is service, and I'm able to do that. But what about you? What about everyone else? What about serving? So there is a lot of joy in serving, and anybody in here that serves at all knows that you get more out of it than you actually put into it. It's a very fulfilling thing to do. And basically, you can serve wherever you are. You don't have to go to a nonprofit. You don't have to go to a church. You can serve in your neighborhood, in your workplace, in your place of worship. Wherever you are, there are people that need help. There are people that need help everywhere. And so you just need to figure out what's your area of interest, what's your passion. Is everybody going to quit their career and become a social worker? No, everyone isn't going to do that, but everyone can serve. And I'll tell you, when you have kids, how many of you have kids in this room? When you have kids, you kind of have to serve, because there are so many volunteer opportunities around your kids, and it's amazing. I mean, sports, scouts, school, PTA, whatever it is, there are so many opportunities to serve when you have kids, and that's really awesome. But there are ways you can serve anywhere that you are. So I would just encourage you to not procrastinate and figure out what is your interest. You can use your own gifts and talents to help people that need help. And from a nonprofit standpoint, I'm just going to say, we need you. We need volunteers, and we need board members. Think about what your gift is. My son, for example, said, what am I going to do to help homeless people? Well, he's an IT professional. He can do websites. He can do graphics, actually. I mean, there's so many things, no matter what it is that your gifts and talents are, you can use them to help other people. So I urge you to do that. And I do just want to leave you with my favorite quote. It's on my refrigerator, and it's the Gandhi mantra: be the change you wish to see in the world. So thank you, and happy volunteering.